Hello. So, my reading program is called PCI, and the level I have is just level 1 for my students. It was published in 2007 by Janie Hagen McLean and Jill L. Haney. Just kind of some background on my students before I talk about the curriculum. So, I have students ranging from my lowest, which they are identifying their names, usually just alphabet, sounds, really basic. I have a lot of nonverbal kids, so we do a lot of field of two options. Then my high group is reading. They're on a low first grade level. A lot of them can identify basic sight words, while others are reading 2-3 sentences, just really short, simple. And so this curriculum has been really nice because it kind of helps with that range. To get started, we work a lot on reading comprehension as well. And so this curriculum really helps because, for example, I did pull out some things to show you. So one lesson, we would talk about the word this. I would introduce it and I would say, this is our word this. And then the nice thing about the curriculum is, as you look, it has it all mapped out right here. So we just follow along and say, this is what we need to do. It makes it really nice because I do have 4 aides in my room and I can just hand them the book and say, okay, this is the lesson I need you to run today. Also, because my students are nonverbal, I have to adapt the curriculum a lot. And this curriculum has been really easy to actually adapt for my students. For my nonverbal kids, I have a lot of visuals. So for example, with the word this, we do a lot of matching. So I would pull the letters off. And for some kids, I would put all 4 letters down. And then they just pick them up and match them. Other kids, like one student in particular, he's very low, and it's very much, here's our letter T, we're gonna match it hand over hand. And he is also working on letters, just plain letters. So a lot of times I will say, where's my letter T? He will then grab it. He does need help sometimes with the field of two, so sometimes we have to modify that even more of, this is my letter T, good job grabbing the letter T and matching it. So that's one way we use this curriculum. Another way for my higher students that are nonverbal, because I do have some that can read, but they are nonverbal, so trying to get them to verbalize can be hard. Sometimes I will do even this matching, where I will have all of these pulled off, and we will read together of this flower. And then a lot of times I will even do a field of two of that one and say, which one says this flower? And then they will take it and match it. This was actually in the curriculum itself. It is actually a tracing section, which I do like for some of my students as well that do have handwriting goals. Not all of my students do handwriting. This is a worksheet I do hand each of my kids though, and have them at least scribble on the page. While they're coloring on the page, we're emphasizing, this is the word this is a flower, this is a trash can, this is a hanger, this is a bus, this is a bird house. And we're emphasizing what they are seeing on the page to get them introduced into that reading section. Even though this curriculum may be a little higher than what they need, we still try to adapt it to meet their needs. And like I said, this is one thing I like about this curriculum is it does give me a lot of options for that. Another thing I really like is it already comes with data sheets, which for me is huge because I have to keep track of all of my students and where they are at and how they are progressing because they are all on IEPs. It also helps if I'm getting ready to do an IEP and I need a baseline of, okay, this student can now identify letters and sounds. Do we want to move them on to identifying words? And so I can look at this and say, oh, you know what? This date, they were able from a field of two, or they were able to verbalize to me what this word was. And I can take that into our IEP meeting and say, this is their baseline already, and I'm ready to go, and I don't need to do extra work and extra testing. So that is really nice for me as well. The one thing that I have struggled with on this curriculum is the fact that there are 140 words in this curriculum. My students will never, not, I shouldn't say never, but we struggle getting through those 140 words during the year. They really need a lot of practice, which is what we talked about in our book is, practice makes perfect. And the fact that they do need a lot of practice and a lot of exposure to these words. I don't teach a word a day. It's usually a word a week. Of this is our word. This is our word. And talking about the different words. A while back we did the word like. And luckily, through Donor's Choice, I was able to get some new reading books for my higher kids. And we were able to get these sight word books. And so when we did the word like, I was able to then incorporate even farther and say, okay, let's look at this book. We actually made copies because I only got 5 copies of each, and because my students can be very destructive when they get upset, we then make copies for the students. And it's nice because in this copy, they can color. We go along and we follow through. We talked about this is how we open a book, this is how we turn the page, we follow along here. So there's a lot of background that we can do. We can also do comprehension of, I like my smile. Oh, she likes her what? Can you show me? Can you tell me? And so we can work on comprehension as well. Also, with some of my kids, here again, it's just reading those sight words. Sometimes I will give them, we have these little dot markers, and I'll say, find the word like and color it. And so we will dot the word like because that is our word this week. So there's a lot of things that I was able to adapt with this curriculum, and it made it really nice because I was able to get some of those key learning strategies down that the reading talked about. In the reading, it talked a lot about phonemic awareness and phonological awareness and being able to recognize onset and rhymes, knowing the difference between the first, middle, and last sound. So as we're doing each word, like the word this, I can then sound it out with them and say, oh, it's. What's our beginning, what's our middle, and what's our end sound that we're hearing. And then with that, they can also create it or match it depending on their level as well. So as we're sounding them out, they can sit there and put them on. We can spell it together. Sometimes I leave it like this and we just practice saying each sound of the letters we hear. Another thing that works out nice is building on the vocabulary. Throughout the week, we like to talk about, oh, remember our sight word this week is this. And so during the day, we will refer to it. If we're reading another book during our second reading time, sometimes if that word comes up in the reading, I'll be like, oh, guess what? That's our sight word. And we try to emphasize what that means. We try to use it a lot in sentences that week as well as staff, just to kind of get the kids aware of what that word even means, which goes into the text comprehension as well that the book talked about. Fluency is also another key strategy, and I like this curriculum, and I'm going to flip back to the beginning lesson. The very beginning is really simple for the kids. They start off with the word my, and it gives them the word and the picture. This helps them be able to start that fluency of right now we are just working on one word and we're looking at one picture. I also have extra pictures here, so sometimes we will grab the words, and these are not the right words, but for example, if this said my and this was the bed, I could do pictures of my bed. Now you create the sentence, and those nonverbal kids here again can build on that, which makes it nice. So that is a lot of my reading curriculum and how it really does adapt. One other con that I just kind of briefly talked about was the fact that it does gives books within the story, but it's after every 5 words, and I feel like my students need more exposure, and so that's where I bought more of these type of books. I don't have one for every word that we talk about, but I have them for a lot of them. Also finding them online, finding those books that we can incorporate as well, I think is really great because it helps them be able to visually see more than just the word itself, but they can see it within the sentences. So that is my reading curriculum. For the most part, I love it. I think it really helps all of my learners from the low to the high ones. And that's all.